Welcome to Module 15, Lesson 5. Our I can statement reads, I can add fractions and mix numbers using the properties of addition. So what we're going to do here is use another method of adding fractions and mixed numbers. This time we're going to use those properties of addition to help make it a little bit simpler for us. All right, number 1. The Watson family cross-country skis on all 3 trails in this park. How many miles do they ski? Okay, so here's the distance of each. The commutative and associative properties of addition can help us add fractions and mixed numbers mentally. But first we need to write our equation. So we're going to find the total distance. We know the wood trail is 4 8/10 miles. The mountain trail is 3 5/10 miles. And the wolf trail is 2 2/10 miles. And that will give us the total distance. The commutative property allows us to change the order in which we're adding. Right? So if we use the commutative property to order the mixed numbers, so the fractions that add to 1 are next to each other. What does that mean? Do we see any fractions that will add to 1 whole? Right away, I see 8/10 and 2/10. So I'm going to use the commutative property to reorder these. So it says 4 8/10 plus 2 2/10 plus 3 5/10 will equal my total distance. Now I'm going to use the associative property to add these two together first. So if I add 4 8/10 plus 2 2/10. Well, why am I going to do that? Because this will give me 1 more whole, right? So if I add 2/10 to 4 8/10, I know that I'm getting to 5. Plus my additional 2 here will get me to 7, right? So what I'm saying here is 4 8/10 plus 2/10 equals 5. Plus the remaining 2 will give me 7/10. Plus 3 5/10 will give me the answer of the total distance. Right? So I've already done one step. 7 plus 3 5/10 gives me a total of 10 5/10. So how far do they ski? 10 5/10 miles. Go ahead and pause if you need any more time to complete this. Okay, number 2. Allie practices ice skating for 1 1/4 hours on Monday, 2/4 hours on Tuesday, and 3/4 hours on Wednesday. How many hours does she spend practicing skating? Right, so our equation to solve, go ahead and write it. Okay, so we should have 1 1/4 plus 2/4 plus 3/4. And this will give me the number of hours. I'm just going to use H for hours. What property can we use to change the order of the addends? Rewrite your equation so the fractions and fractional parts that add to 1 are next to each other or are added first. All right, the property that allows us to do that is the commutative property. And if we rewrite that equation, 1 1/4 and 3/4 will add to a whole. So we'll rearrange to say 1 1/4 plus 3/4 plus 2/4 equals our number of hours. What property can you use to group the addends that are easy to add mentally? Use parentheses to group the addends. The associative property allows us to do that. But I like to think of associative as who are you associating with. As we put the parentheses, we tell them they must associate with each other first. So 1 3/4, or 1 1/4 plus 3/4 plus 2/4 gives us our number of hours. Our parentheses go here because those are the ones we're going to add together first. All right, so we're going to go ahead and show our work. We have 1 1/4 plus 3/4. If I add this on, I'm going to get to the next whole, which would be 2. Plus my 2/4 will equal my number of hours. So my number of hours she spends practicing must be 2 2/4 hours. All right, go ahead and solve the check understanding. Press pause and then press play when you're ready to check your work. All right, let's go ahead and check your work. For this first problem, I wrote out my equation. I then used the commutative property to move where 1 3/8 was. And then I used the associative property to add parentheses. This way I added 4 5/8 plus 1 3/8. I knew 3/8 would get me to the next whole of 5, plus 1 more would get me to 6. Plus that additional 2 1/8 pounds would get me 8 1/8 pounds. For number 2, I could just use the associative property to add parentheses here. 1/4 would get me to the next whole of 2, plus 1 more would get me to 3, plus 1 3/4 gets me to 4 3/4. For number 3, I use the commutative and associative property. I use the commutative property to rearrange these two fractions. The associative property allowed me to add those two first. 5/6 gets me to the next whole of 5, plus 1 more gets me to 6 wholes, plus that additional 3 2/6 gets me my answer of 9 2/6.